Welcome to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast, where we celebrate Minnesota's incredible fiction authors and the stories that make our literary scene so vibrant. I'm Rob Jung.
And I'm Michael MacBride. Together, we're the team behind Bell Cow Productions and the Bell Cow Catalog, a digital catalog designed to connect Minnesota authors with readers, libraries, and indie bookstores.
The catalog will be heading to all 377 Minnesota libraries, 80 plus indie bookstores, plus those in border cities such as Sioux Falls, Fargo, Superior, and La Crosse.
And now with this podcast, we get to bring those amazing voices to life. Every episode features one of our herd members talking about their books, their writing journey, and the stories behind the stories.
And before we start, let us apologize for all the cow-related puns you're about to hear.
All right, let's dig in.
Well, welcome to the Bell Cow Herd podcast. We are absolutely delighted today to have S.L. Smith as our guest author. S.L. is written about, 10 or 11 mysteries?
I'm just finishing up on number 11.
Finishing up number 11, and is unique, and we will talk about her uniqueness during this course of this podcast. S.L., welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So,
I think you have the very best author photo that I have ever seen. The picture of you with the pipe is just fantastic. Like, everybody should go to your webpage and check it out. That is one of my very favorites that I have seen. So well done there.
Thank you. I love it too. And actually, Sisters in Crime had a photo booth. We're talking years ago, and that's when I did that photo. And yeah, it's my trademark photo.
It's wonderful.
So, my question, I used to collect pipes. So where did you get the calabash? Did you buy it in Turkey?
No, actually, Sisters in Crime provided it as a prop for that photo booth.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
nice. So I thought maybe you sat out back after you'd finished a book with a little scotch and your pipe and enjoyed it. So.
That would be way too much fun.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background. With the purpose of these podcasts is to let our viewers and get to know you, and we usually go through this questions with, who are you, where's your background, talk about your writing, and read from one of your books. Michael's going to do that tonight. And then finish it up with what we call a lightning round, which is a bunch of silly, short, quick questions that have usually nothing to do with your writing, but are designed to let people know things about you that you probably didn't want them to know to begin with.
Okay.
Oh, there are no gotcha questions. They're just in fun. They're character revealing. I think of as
That's a
like,
nice way to put it.
Like Rob said, though, start with some background. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to writing, please.
Well, I grew up in St. Cloud and came down to St. Paul to go to college and fell in love with the Twin Cities. And actually, I was in love with the Twins way before that, and got to see a lot more games with living here than I did up in St. Cloud. So anyway, got a job here after college and worked in public safety, the state of Minnesota Department of Public Safety, for most of my career. Worked a lot with fire departments, police departments, emergency services, agencies, preparing for and responding to disasters. One of my bosses was a retired police chief, and he was willing to serve as my authenticity check. And thanks to that, his friendship was the only reason I was willing to take on writing mysteries with my protagonists as two cops. So they're two investigators with the St. Paul Police Department, and their names are Pete and Martin, Pete Culhane and Martin Tierney. And in my first book is the first time they're partnered up, and they have stayed partners throughout the series.
Well, I wonder about that. Does Pete feel slighted because Culhane gets top billing all the time?
He does, but the thing is, he is sort of happy to stay in the background He's not as assertive. He's not as confident as Pete. And he has spent the last, well, in their life, actually, only about 4 years, learning a lot from Pete.
Okay. So he's kind of the junior partner.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, his first case as an investigator with the St. Paul PD was in my first book, Blinded by the Sight.
Okay. And that is a nice segue into what makes you very unique. Um, for those who don't know, SL is blind. And how do you do what you do without being able to see what you're doing? I mean I mean I can't do it when I'm looking. I mean I'm in awe of you.
Well, it
Um,
might be better because I can't see what I'm doing. But what I tell people is that in writing a book, the hardest thing is to find the cursor, because I literally have to move the mouse around until all of a sudden I could see something moving. And I can't tell you how much time I waste just trying to get the cursor to the right place so I can make a correction or an edit. I cannot read my books, but thank goodness for modern technology, because Microsoft Word reads it to me. And if I can stop it and then find where I am, which takes an inordinate amount of time, then I will do edits. And I'm so grateful because first of all, I have an editor, but I have a sister who proofs the book for me. And I can't even, things have gotten progressively worse. When I wrote Blinded by the Sight, and the name started out with it started with a different title, and I don't remember what it is right now, but I found out that Lori L. Lake had a book that involved two St. Paul cops and had that title already when that book was coming out in 2011. So it's like, oh no, I can't use the same title when it's set in the same place and all that. So I had some friends. I belonged to the National Writers Union, and I had a couple of friends who belonged, and I came up with like a dozen titles, and both of them liked that one because of my vision. They thought it was so appropriate because of my vision.
sure.
So, yeah. So anyway, but it's it's a challenge. And unfortunately, it's progressing. So I'm fearful the day will come when I can't do anything. As far as writing goes, which is why I spend a lot of time writing now, because I've got more stories to tell. But my nephew, thanks to him, I'm able to do some writing. For example, I cannot read black on white. But he changed the contrast, I mean the color scheme, so it's white on black, which makes it a little easier. I could not sit there and read my book off the monitor, and well, I could, but it would take me I can probably read about 3 words a minute. Yeah. So anyway, but at least I can find my way enough. So like when my sister was editing, she in fact was going through, she's got like 50 pages left of my 11th book. She would say, okay, this page number, okay, this paragraph. And it's like, don't tell me the paragraph number, because I don't even have a prayer of counting those paragraphs. But anyway, she'll tell me like how it starts, and then I'll do a word search and then get there. So, I manage that way in getting accomplished what I have managed to accomplish.
I was
How
kind
long is
of,
it?
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, I was going to ask if you have tried using any of the, voice capture technology. Like I know there used to be Dragon was
Yeah.
a thing probably 10 years ago. And now like it feels like voice to text is so common, even just built into phones. Maybe there's hope beyond the point when you don't need to use the keyboard.
The thing is this, I don't think I can narrate a book. I honestly believe that there's some magical connection between my fingers and the keyboard. Because it's when my fingers are on that keyboard that the story starts coming to me. And I'm a pantser.
I was going to say that answers that question. I was.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So when I sit down, like I'm thinking about book 12 right now. And when I sit down to start a book, like book 11, which is called Revenge, I didn't know who the victim was. Well, I knew who the victim was, but I didn't know why they were killed, and I didn't know who murdered them.
Okay.
So it's like Pete and Martin go up. So they find this body, and Pete and Martin talk to his family and start talking to all these people. And the answers to their questions are what bring me to the next step and the next step and the next step. So they practically literally are solving these crimes for me. And I'm just writing it down as they do.
Fly on the wall.
Yes.
So where did you come up with the names for your two lead characters?
That's a great question. Culhane was the name of a babysitter I had as a small child, 5, 6, 7 years old, Mrs. Culhane, and she was a wonderful person. I just loved her, and she was so sweet and so kind. And when I started writing the books, I didn't know how she spelled her name, and I said, "Mom, how did Mrs. Culhane spell her last name?" And Mom said, "I don't know." But see, we're talking the 50s. Mom and dad probably paid her in cash. They got her name from, someone, or she lived in the neighborhood. And so, mom never knew her name. And so what I did is I did it phonetically as best I could, Culnane. And, I went on the internet trying to search, and that didn't help anything. So yeah, and about 2015, a cousin of mine asked if I wanted to see the signed-in book for my dad's funeral home. And I said I'd love to. So he mailed it to me, and I was staying with mom at the time. And so it came, and I gave it to mom, and I can't read handwriting at all. And so she sat at the counter. I was probably fixing dinner, and read the names to me. And she said, Margaret Culhane. And I said, whoa, stop. How does she spell it? And mom said, Culnane. I was literally dancing. I was so thrilled I had done it right. And I'm a perfectionist. I had already decided if I ever found out I spelled it incorrectly, I was going to have Pete's family do genealogical research and discover that the spelling had been changed. But
I love it.
dealing with that, in 2023, I believe, I got an email one night from Peter Culhane, subject Pete Culhane. I'm going, whoa, you are entering the twilight zone. And this guy was emailing me because someone told him that I had books that Pete Culhane was the main character, and he's from across the pond.
Oh.
And he thought he was the only Pete Culhane in the world because they're from County Cork. During the potato famine, they moved to the United Kingdom, and on the birth certificate, they misspelled it, and they never corrected it. So the family continued to use that spelling, which was Culnane. The name was actually Cullinan, which in Gaelic means wood of the holly bush or Hollywood.
Oh, wow. Funny.
Yeah. So anyway, so I got
Hollywood,
all
really.
that information from him. And it was, like I said, it was amazing to get an email from my main character.
Yeah, I could only imagine. It made me think of like the Stephen King Dark Half book,
Yeah,
where
really.
something like that. So you mentioned, I mean, piece of this I think also ties into research and how you come up with those things. I saw on your webpage you said you published family memoirs as well,
Yes.
and that helped with research. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, I was doing genealogical research for years and years and years. And then I was diagnosed with cancer in 2003 and told I had 28 months,
Oh, wow.
give or take. The doctor actually would not say how much time I had. And I said, according to my research, we're talking like 28 months. And she said, well, yeah. So anyway, so I had already written my first book but it was not blinded by the sight at that time. But I had written the first book and decided, you know what? I need to do family memoirs. I had done the genealogical research, but to me, genealogy seems so empty. I didn't just care where they were born and who they married and how many children they had. I wanted to know who these people were. So one of the things I did was one of the times when my dad came to visit me and they lived in Florida, they moved to Florida, mom and dad did. I said, you know, Dad, I can't keep up with your speaking and it would, you know, I don't want to stop you every 10 words, but I had a little cassette player. I said, will you record some of your stories? So he did. And it took, and this was like in 19, well, he died in 98. So this had to be in about 90, well, actually, it was in 1997. It was a year before he died. So until 2006 or 2004, when I was working on the family memoirs, I was not able to go and listen to it. So then I finally did, and of course the tears are streaming,
Yeah.
and I'm typing it up, you know, play it, stop, play, stop, and typing it up. And so those stories went in, and then, you know, I got stories from my mom, and I contacted all these people I had found in my genealogical research, and got stories from them, stories about my ancestors, and, you know, made friends all over. Found a cousin. Um, my family a lot of them came from like out east and moved to St. Joseph, Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
And I knew, and my mom's father's mother, her last name was Schindler. And so through the genealogical research, I met a Maggie Schindler still lived in St. Joe, who had tons of stories, including the fact that we are like fifth cousins with the Schindler from Schindler's List, however many dozens of times removed. So
Wow.
anyway, she and I became friends, lifelong friends, and, you know, we're friends for like 20 years until she just recently died. But made so many connections and so many friends. One of my friends came to my book launch, and one of those friends, and we, you know, went out to lunch, and, you know, it just made, like I said, wonderful connections and learned so much. And like, so the books, it was interesting because I finished the book for my mom's side of the family, and then I was worried, you know, that my dad's side, I was going to shortchange them, but I got that one completed also, and they ended up to be within 5 pages of being the same exact number of pages. And they are full of stories and full of pictures that I was able to find. Like I found the wedding pictures for all of my great great grandparents,
Wow.
which
Wow.
I know, which is phenomenal. But, you know,
Yeah.
people, it's amazing what people have lying around if you ask the right questions of the right people.
Yeah. Amen. Um, well, let's getting back to your mysteries. Um, there's a thread that runs through all of your books. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, there are a few threads there. One of the threads is Pete's close, you know, love of family, the importance of family.
Hmm.
And I think that actually reveals for me, because family is tantamount. And so Pete has a close relationship with his grandmother, as did I with my grandmother. And there's, uh, you know, Pete's um, bent on justice and solving crimes. He's driven and works incredible hours because he just needs to figure it out.
How in your books do you manage to balance that family life with the workaholic part of him?
They
When
do seem
when
at odds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are. But the good news is when he's working a case, he's probably working 14, 16 hours. But it also means he solves it more quickly, and then he's got some time. And that's when he makes up. First of all, Pete is a widower. And
Okay.
yes. And in the first book, Blinded by the Sight, he finally begins dating. And that relationship grows throughout the series. And he
Okay.
ultimately marries her. And
Oh,
then, yeah,
in which book?
book 7, I believe. And then book
Okay.
8, they have a child. They didn't
Okay.
wait long.
I love it.
Well,
Well,
years
how
could
long?
have transpired between books for all we know.
Yeah.
That's true. They could. But actually, I have about 4 books per year. These actually, yeah, these guys have only aged about 4 years in 12 books.
Wow. Okay then.
So
Yeah.
Well,
unfortunately, that's not been the case with me. Go figure. I mean,
yeah,
you
how did
think if
that
I could
happen?
write that story, why can't I write it for me?
Yeah, how did
Right.
that happen? Well, Michael, why don't you read a little bit from Malice so that our listeners and viewers can get a flavor of SL's writing?
Well, before I do that, SL, so you gave me Malice to read, which is book 10. Could you set it up a bit for us and just kind of give us the backstory of book 10, and then I'll do the reading right after that.
Okay. Well, in book 10, it starts out with a guy who lives in a condominium complex, and he's the president of the condo association, leaving his apartment to go to work. And this guy is self-centered, narcissistic, and for example, he walks out at like 5:30 in the morning and lets the door slam behind him, and it doesn't matter because not his problem. And he is pretty much universally hated. So there are lots of people that have reasons to do him in.
Lots of suspects.
Yes, yes. So on his way to work, he's murdered.
And
Someone,
that's the part I'll read.
yes, yeah, exactly. So,
Cool.
and the part you'll read gives more history about him and the kind of person he is. He's the kind of person you love to hate.
I was going to say when I was reading it in preparation, it made me laugh. Like I did laugh out loud, which I think is, I mean, it's a feat to accomplish in writing, right? Like to make someone chuckle by themselves. So well done.
Well, thank you. And there, I'd like to say that my books have a lot of mystery, a little romance, and a little humor. Because Pete and Martin are always, trading off stories and trading off jokes, or getting on each other's backs. So, but in a kind way, in a funny way.
Sure. 1. Unanticipated exit. At 5:10 a.m., Fred Bruton uttered a string of expletives as he tugged on his down jacket and zipped it up to his chin. Then he pulled his stocking cap down until it covered his ears and was so close to his eyes that it jeopardized his ability to see. He'd listened to the news and weather while getting ready for work. After 2 weeks of what appeared to be an early spring, St. Paul was back in the deep freeze. Sure, the temperature was 20 degrees, but with northerly winds of 20 miles an hour and gusting to 40, the wind chill was below zero. It's April, for crying out loud, he muttered, and I just got accustomed to manageable temperatures. Yanking on his warmest gloves, he stormed out the door of his condo with little regard for the loud slam behind him. Oh, yeah, he thought, as he rushed to the stairway. I need to add the elimination of that obnoxious racket to my list of improvements for this place. Fred considered himself to be the sole reason that property values of the condos in this complex hadn't plummeted. When he bought this unit 4 years ago, it was a real steal. He believed that was because the board of directors had let things slide. Seeing the possibilities and determined to change things, he ran for a slot on the board of directors for the annual meeting scheduled to be held 2 years ago. As was apparently often the case for this association, the board didn't have a quorum, so the meeting actually couldn't be held. Not to be deterred, Fred kissed up to several board members and busted his butt until they were compelled to appoint him to a vacancy while waiting for the next annual meeting. He figured he'd be indispensable by then and an obvious shoo-in. That was 2 years ago, and Fred was still on the board by virtue of that appointment. He surmised that the majority of the owners obviously didn't care what was done in and around the complex, and he took advantage of their apathy. Just a few months after his appointment, he'd fast-talked and worked hard enough to sell the other members of the board on naming him the president. Since then, he achieved his priorities with few, if any, constraints. When talking to the board and the residents, he referred to those projects as maintenance. Otherwise, per the governing documents, he had to get member approval before spending as little as $1,000 on any single project. If he waited for an annual meeting and the approval of a majority of the members before proceeding, nothing would ever happen. Fred grinned with satisfaction when he thought about the numerous times he'd gotten around that stupid stumbling block. But his smile quickly transitioned to a frown. Based on the number of complaints submitted to the management company over the last few months, things might soon become much more difficult. Fred was furious that so many owners permitted the necessary increases in their monthly dues to dictate their opinions. Why can't they understand the benefits of what I'm doing? Why can't they see beyond their collective noses? This is a volunteer position. Talk about a bunch of ingrates. No wonder they have so much trouble filling vacancies on the board. Fred clumped down the stairs, oblivious to the racket created by his 6'2", 260 pounds. At least that was what his driver's license said he weighed. In the process, he'd awakened the residents with bedrooms bordering this stairway who somehow slept through his slamming door. Right now, all he cared about was the weather and having to go outside to reach his car and struggle to start it in this sub-zero temperature. Most of his neighbors didn't have to go outside to reach their vehicles, and the fact that he did was of his own making, though not really his fault. He had to find a place to store the stuff that had filled his 4-bedroom home and wouldn't fit in his 2-bedroom condo. He wasn't about to pay a storage fee, so he jammed the stuff into his garage. It was the only option, aside from working some sort of deal with the witch to whom he had been married for a decade and a half. The garage was so packed he'd been hard-pressed to find enough room for something as small as a college yearbook. Having failed to sort through and get rid of all that stuff, which his ex called crap, he was forced to park in one of the too few spots in the parking lot. After all, it wasn't his fault that whipping this condominium complex into shape while ensuring it was safe and had curb appeal took so much time. Add to that, he had to keep his kids in line and on track academically and make sure the people who worked for him towed the line. All of that left little time for anything else. It angered him that none of them appreciated all he did to make their lives better. His lack of availability had even cost him many of his friends, but he couldn't worry about that. At least for now, there were too many other, more important things on his agenda. He truly loved the power and prestige that being the president of the condo association provided. Fred ran all out to his truck, using a pace that most guys his age would have defined as a jog. As he scraped the ice off his windshield and windows, he swore he'd get rid of all the things in his garage that forced him to park outside on days like this. Unbeknownst to him, that would never happen. Time had run out for Fred. The stuff in his garage was about to become someone else's problem. We had a little taste of book 10. You said you're working on book 11, and it sounded like you were already saying book 12 was percolating in the background. How many do you have? Like, how many do you have kind of going at the same time? Are you always 1 or 2 books ahead?
Actually, typically one is put to bed before I start the next. And that was the case between 10 and 11. But I had decided that I wanted to finish or start book 12 on December 1st. So I'm already 2 days behind. And Pete is driven, so am I. So, and part of it is because, honestly, I don't know how long my vision will hold up enough for me to continue to write.
Sure.
So I want to take advantage of the time I have.
So, SL, do you listen to audiobooks then?
I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am for audiobooks. And I have listened to audiobooks forever. When the public libraries were getting rid of their cassette books, well, and the Minneapolis Public Library, at any rate, always, had a rollover. They would get new ones and get rid of some.
Right.
And they had a Friends of the Library bookstore that's right across the hall from the Minneapolis Public Library. That's down on 4th and Hennepin. And I used to go in there with my backpack and 2 doubled paper grocery bags with the handles and fill them all up. And then I'd take the bus down there, fill them all up, and go home and go back the next day and do the same thing. And I have about 600 audiobooks.
Wow.
Wow.
So who's your favorite author other than yourself?
Well, yeah, just me. I really like Sue Grafton. I really like William Kent Kruger. I like some of I'm trying to think, Lisa Scottolini.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I'm trying Lawrence Block, and
Not
I'm
familiar
trying
with
to
him.
remember the name of his detective. I really like that guy. And he had several series going. One was like a burglar and stuff, but he had one with a detective who was like in his 50s and on the wagon, which is a common theme. But anyway, and I can't think of his name, but at any rate,
Hmm.
like that series. I'm trying to think of the author's name, but um, A Thin Dark Line. She wrote A Thin Dark Line, and I really like that book a lot. I like John Sanford, but I mostly like the Virgil Flowers series because Lucas Davenport just got too dark for me.
It
Eh,
really was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I liked Patricia Cornwell a lot until her series got so dark. I was listening to one of her books, and it's like, after like 10 minutes, like I can't even listen to this because it was so graphic and so horrible what happened, what she described. It's like, yeah, no, this is I mean, my books do not get graphic. I don't have multiple murders, graphic descriptions. I don't like to read it, and if I'm writing it, I have to read it about 30 times. So
Right.
I don't want to subject
Yeah.
myself to that.
Tammy Hogue was the one you were thinking of, The
Yes,
Thin Dark
yes, very,
Line. Yeah.
very good. Yes.
Yeah. My mother-in-law reads a lot of those mysteries, and then they get circulated back to us. And so we had a bunch of Scottolini and Tammy Hogue, and um, yeah, I've read some of those. It's funny. I told Rob once upon a time I don't really read mysteries, but I have on occasion. So, so I'm curious
Well, I
then.
think I suggest you read S.L. Smith.
I think so. Yeah, I hear she's good.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
And
Do you have a favorite narrator or voiceover actor for the books? Like, is there someone? Do you seek somebody out based on what they do versus the author?
Um, I really like George Guidall. And my first book is out in audio now. Blinded by the Sight is, and Running Scared is in process. And the narrator is Jim Aarons. I think he does a fantastic job.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yes,
good.
yes. So
Good. Is he local? Is he Twin Cities?
yes, he is.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm
And
not familiar.
it's interesting because there's a chase scene in book one where Pete is chasing a guy up, a staircase in like a high-rise apartment building. So he's running up from the 36th floor to the 40th floor, and you can tell from Jim's voice that Pete is getting winded. And it's like,
Oh,
yeah, it's like, wow.
that's good. That is good. So we wrap these up usually, SL, with, as I said, this sort of rapid fire set of questions. So I'm gonna lead off with one, and it is if there was one person, alive or dead, that you could sit down and have lunch with, who would it be, and what would you talk about?
Either John Wayne or Harmon Killebrew.
Well, there's a pair.
Wow, that's an interesting setting. Yeah. So
Yeah,
why
So
those?
radically different people, but yes.
yeah,
Well, and I was always a fan of John Wayne's. So,
okay.
but and Harmon Killebrew, just the nicest, kindest, most decent person. So, and he was when he was playing baseball, he was always my hero. And in
Wow.
fact, if you read books, well, book 7 for sure. No, book 8. I mean, no, book. I'm getting close. Book 9. So it talks about Harmon Killebrew there, and it talks about him in another book as well. It talks about him in book Dead Reckoning, because a body is found over along a trail along the south side of the Mississippi River, and the guy was hit and hit with something that killed him. And so Pete is telling Martin, it had to be someone who was really strong, like someone like Harmon Killebrew. So they get finished interviewing several people, and Martin says, "Who's next on the list? Harmon Killebrew?" And Pete said, "That'd be a little tough."
Yeah.
So I'm curious with John Wayne as one of your two people, favorite movie of all time. Like if you had to pick one, what would be your choice?
Either the Alamo or I love this also the Sons of Katie Elder.
Oh,
Oh,
interesting.
and The Good Man. I like that a lot too.
Okay. So, Night on the Town or Curled Up by the Fire?
Curled Up by the Fire.
Curled Up by the Fire. Okay. Um,
Yeah. I'm curious because I think I saw on your webpage that your grandmother was the one who inspired you in writing initially. So it made me think about childhood moments and things like that. Like what were some of the early books you read or some of those things that inspired you early to want to write?
First of all, I read everything. I was a voracious reader. And mentioning my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom's dad, died when mom was only 13. But his cemetery plot was like a mile from our house. And it was so important to my grandmother that the grass be green and the flowers stay alive. So I would take a hose and a sprinkler and a book and ride my bike to the cemetery at least a couple times a week and keep everything green and growing. So way back when, I used to read everything about horses.
hmm.
And then I read, when I was like in sixth grade, seventh grade, I was reading all kinds of books like God is My Co-Pilot, The Red Badge of Courage, lots of military stuff. And then back in the early 70s, I was reading all the John Jakes stuff about the revolution. And I moved from there into mysteries, and I'm not really sure how that happened, but I got into mysteries and just loved them, and they've been my main reads ever since.
Do you remember what the first mystery you read was?
I do not, because and
Okay.
I did not read Nancy Drew. I know, shame on me. What can I say? But
Wait a minute, you might lose your union card over that one.
yes,
We'll cut that part out.
Yeah, we
yeah,
don't we
please
don't
do.
want people picketing your house because you didn't read Nancy Drew. Um,
Uh,
where do you write?
In my kitchen. That's where my computer is. I have a good sized kitchen, and I have my kitchen table, and then between there's a wall that's, well, it's like a half wall, with like a big window in it that separates my kitchen from my formal dining room, and my computer's right by the wall that separates the two. And I sit there and write, and I always have the radio on, and I have it on Minnesota Public Radio, but I need the background noise.
Okay,
And occasionally I'll hear something they say, but mostly it's just nice, nice companionship.
Love it.
interesting. You speaking of the kitchen, Michael, this is usually your question. I'll let you ask this one.
No, you go ahead. I got one more. You do this.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier that you were cooking while somebody was reading to you. Do you
Yep.
have a famous dish or a dish you're famous for that cooking wise? Yeah.
I could. I might as well be honest. This is what I usually eat now. I take a low carb tortilla, put a line of butter on it and a line of mustard, cut it in half, and roll a hot dog up in each half and cook it in the microwave for 1 minute. If you can
Sounds
cook
like
it in the
heaven.
if you can cook it in the microwave in a minute or less, I like it.
Okay. All right.
And I spent 4.5 years living with my mom, and I cooked everything then. Um, Actually, I have to tell you this story about my grandmother. And she was my mom's mom, and she lived to be 101, and she was my hero. And she had a wonderful sense of humor. But she broke her hip when she was 97, and the doctors told my mom, that she was in the hospital for like 3 days, and then of course they kicked them out, and she was in a nursing home for like 5 weeks. And the doctor told my mom, she'll never get out of the nursing home. And my mom said, "You don't know my mother." So 5 weeks later, I went up to St. Cloud and rode on the the bus that they used, the Metro Mobility kind of bus, to take her home. And so I said, "Grammy, what do you want for dinner tonight?" So she said, "Well," she pulled, and she always got the morning paper, and she always cut out recipes, and she always tried them. She was cooking till the end. So she pulled out a recipe that was for barbecued pork chops, that you had to make the barbecue sauce. So I did. And we're sitting there eating dinner, and she said, "You can cook." And I said, "Now, Grammy, here's the thing. That's a carefully guarded secret. Don't tell anyone." But, when I was a kid, my mom loved to golf, and I would fix dinner lots of times. So I can
Okay.
I can fix pretty much anything. I choose not to, but I can.
I like your hot dog recipe. I think they should introduce that at the Metrodome so that that's not the Metrodome anymore. Target Field.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I could set up my own stand there.
There you go. See, a little
Will
side
you
gig.
come and make change for me though?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
My mom used to make a thing similar, actually, oddly enough. It was a slice of bread with butter spread on it, a piece of American cheese slice on it, the hot dog with some mustard rolled with a toothpick through it, and then put in the oven, and then you would roast it basically until it kind of browned the bread, and then I used to love that as a kid. That was one of my favorites. So I haven't had that in years. I might have to try that now that you've inspired me.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I could inspire you.
So
Michael, you've got to invite SL and myself over if you're going to do that. So
we'll share our hot dog dishes.
there you go. Yeah.
So to kind of bring this home, I'm curious if you have a favorite bookstore or someplace that you like going or supporting, or places that sell your books, or both if they're connected.
Once Upon a Crime. I love Once Upon a Crime. Devin always does my book launches. So, and yeah, and they're great people, very supportive. Yeah. And I have books other places, but they're definitely my favorite. But don't tell anybody.
Okay.
Can you
We'll
can you
keep
bleep this part out?
we'll keep that a secret, like your ability to cook.
Yeah. Perfect.
SL, it's been lovely. What a delightful evening. Once we got the technology problems solved, it was delightful. So thanks for being with us,
Well,
and
and thank you for your patience.
thanks for being part of the herd. And
Yeah.
and we will look forward to having you on Minnesota Mystery Night in the near future. So
Thanks. Same here. Looking forward to it.
We'll be
me
sure to
too.
link all of your webpage down below so people can find your books and that kind of thing as well. But yeah, thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you. And my nephew did my website for me when I redid it.
Cool.
Okay.
Yep. So
Keep it in the family.
yes.
And don't forget, you can see this book and more from Minnesota authors in the Bell Cow catalog, heading to libraries and indie bookstores across Minnesota and beyond.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday with another amazing Minnesota author.